Okay, everyone, continue eating. And, I always love this noon hour. I have no idea whether to say good morning or good afternoon, so I'll just say good noon, good day, right? It's a good day to be a good day, right? And I'm so excited that you guys all decided to join us for this wonderful lunch and just this time together. And I just want to welcome those of you who have not been to Dakota Wesleyan before. Welcome to our campus. We love to have folks on campus to show us what a hidden gem this is. And I think today we're kind of talking about maybe a couple of hidden gems. Dakota Wesleyan is often talked about as a hidden gem here in Mitchell, like, oh, I didn't know. I think the trust industry is a hidden gem, if you will, especially from the experiences that we've been having as we've been talking about our new program. We, instead of, having gobs and gobs of students talking to us, we're having gobs and gobs of employers talking to us, ready to hire these students. So it's a wonderful, beautiful problem. I mean, these folks are going to come in and they're going to have work. So it's a really, really good thing. So we have quite a mix of individuals in this room. Obviously, we have some of our wonderful students here kind of ready to explore, but we also have people from the finance and banking industry as well as the trust industry, and then all of these fine folks that you're going to meet as we get going. So first, I just wanted to, I should have said who I am. Hi, I'm Friedel Thomas. I'm the Vice President for Admissions and Marketing. I always seem to miss that part of everything. So there you have it. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Miss Jessica Beavers, who is going to be our moderator for today for our panel. And you guys can just keep on eating and while we visit here. So Jessica Beavers is the Senior Vice President of Sawmill Trust Company, where she's responsible for business development and trust administration. She has 20 years, you don't look old enough to have 20 years, of prior banking and trust administration experience. She's a certified trust and financial advisor and a certified IRA services professional. She has obtained a bachelor's degree and a master's of business administration from the University of Sioux Falls. On a national level, Jessica is a leader in the American Banking Association, currently serving as an advisory board member to the ABA Trust Schools. In addition, she is a CTFA advisory board member. She has previously participated on the ABA Trust Letter Advisory Board. Students, you should be thinking about these acronyms and what they all mean right now. Locally, Jessica is the founding director of the South Dakota Trust Association, where she currently leads the initiatives for the Education Committee. She has served as an advisory board member with Eide Bailey, located in Sioux Falls, where she weighed in on industry issues. She is also a member of the Sioux Falls Estate Planning Council. In her community, she has served as an executive board member with Volunteers of America, Dakotas, as well as serving as a volunteer with Junior Achievement of South Dakota. I've done that too, it's fun. Jessica is a hockey, wrestling, football, baseball cheering mom of 2 teenage boys. She and her husband enjoy junking, antiquing, and repurposing their finds. Half marathons and Pilates are on her short list, along with walking or being walked by the family doodles. So welcome, Jessica. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, good deal. Let me get my notes. Well, thank you for having us on campus. This is awesome for Dakota Wesleyan University, but it's also awesome for those of us in the industry because we have been asking for something like this for a number of years. So thank you for being here and hosting us today. We're very excited to tell you about the trust industry, our story today, because each of us has a story, and please sit down. I feel like we're in church. I have actually been in the trust industry, actually it's over 25 years, and I know it's a really long time. The last 5 to 10 years, the industry has really exploded with new trust companies that are coming to South Dakota, bringing their clients from around the country, and as you're going to hear, from around the world to South Dakota. And this has really led to a shortage of the trust professionals that we have right here, and it's led to this immediate need that we have in the industry. Just a little bit about the industry to give you a little background. Right now, the Division of Banking has stated that there are 99 public and private state chartered trust companies. That's huge, 99. And that does not include the 9 bank trust departments like the Wells Fargo, the U.S. banks, and those banks. So it's a hopping industry right here in South Dakota. In addition, the FDIC has said that in 2017, there were more assets in the banks in South Dakota than any other state in the entire United States. Assets are parked here in South Dakota for various reasons. In 2017, the fees that were paid by the Division of Banking for supervisory fees, all of the trust departments get audited, right? We have an examiner that comes in. We pay them, believe it or not, we pay them to come in and examine us. Those fees were close to just a little bit over $1 million, $1.15 million. In addition, the trust companies pay tax, right? So we are in an industry that costs the state about zero for us to be here. It's a thriving industry. And in addition to being in South Dakota, we have a population that is aging in the trust industry. There was an article put out by the American Bankers Association in 2016 called Filling the Gap that basically said there's going to be this wave in the next 5 to 10 years of trust officers that are retiring. Another reason for Dakota Wesleyan University to have this program in place to prepare for that. So we're here to tell you our story today. We asked for a program Dakota Wesleyan University delivered, and so we want to tell you who we are. So we're going to start with introductions. We'll just go straight down the line. I'm going to ask each of my colleagues to just introduce themselves, tell us their name, and then just a little bit about their business models, because you heard 99 state chartered trust companies. We're all a little bit different. We all have our own little niche, and I want you to hear a little bit about all of those. So Amy, we're going to start with you.
My name is Amy Bourne, and I've been out of college for a long time, so it's fun for me to come back and see some younger faces. I went to USD as an accounting major and started my career as a CPA. I worked at I. Bailey for 9 years before I left there to work for Dorsey & Whitney Trust Company. Dorsey & Whitney Trust Company is a public trust company located in Sioux Falls, and when I started there, we had 3 employees, and that was 15 years ago. So in a short period of time, we've grown to 24 employees. We have a location in Seattle, Washington, and we're owned by a law firm that's located in Minneapolis. And that law firm also has locations all around the world, and our other estate planning attorneys are located in Seattle, so that's why we have some employees there. Along with my background, I can tell you that my current job was a great move for my career. When I left public accounting, I had just had my son, and I didn't think I could work any more charge hours that they were requiring me to go back for tax season for. And so when I left, my goal was really just to have a better work-life balance. So now at Dorsey & Whitney Trust Company, I serve as the Chief Financial Officer. I kind of wear a lot of hats because since I started there when there were 3 employees, I came in doing trust administration, operations, human resources. As the Chief Financial Officer, I take care of the financials of the trust company as well. And so I've kept all those hats because it's hard to give those up after you've started them, and I really like the variety. So that's a little bit about my background and our company. So I'll give it to Michelle. She has an interesting story to share.
Okay, so straight away you can tell, obviously, I'm not from here. So my name's Michelle Laherissiere. Don't even bother trying to pronounce my surname, just say Michelle, much easier. And I'm from Jersey. And I love seeing the look on people's faces when they're thinking, that ain't a New Jersey accent, and you're absolutely right. I can't do the New Jersey accent. I'd love to be able to do it, but I can't. But I'm from Jersey in the Channel Islands, which is part of Great Britain, very close to France in the English Channel. Where to start with how I got into the industry? I got into it because my dad did it. He's retired now. But I went to theatre school in London to train to be an actress. and that didn't work out. And my dad said, come back to Jersey and interview for a job. I interviewed with Coots, who are now no more. And I got the job, and I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but I loved it. And I've been very lucky in my career to live in lots of different jurisdictions, and obviously I've now landed here. But I've lived in Switzerland and Singapore and the Caribbean. And yes, I chose to move here, knowing what's coming with the winter. I've mainly worked for bank-led trust companies. I've been with Barclays, Citi Trust, a very brief dalliance with Credit Suisse, which wasn't for me. And then I moved to JTC, which used to stand for Jersey Trust Company, but because we're now so global, we've just gone with JTC. And we were in partnership originally with South Dakota Trust Company with Matt, but we decided to go it alone last year, so we're braving it here in Sioux Falls, and we're growing rapidly. Very different model to some of the local trust companies. We have a lot of international clients still doing South Dakota law trusts, but maybe some funkier stuff that isn't the norm here compared to what has traditionally been done. And we're desperately looking for people. So if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, please feel free.
I guess just by looking at me, you can already tell that I'm not from here. And I don't even try to put my Chinese name on that paper, just because people tend to brainstorm how to pronounce my Chinese name instead of focusing on my speech. So Beatrice Skyberg, that's my English name. And I was born and raised in China, moved to South Dakota about 16 years ago. Married here, really enjoying the large empty space in South Dakota. Because I came from Beijing, 80 million people when I left there. 2 hours go to work and 2 hours back, subways and buses. And I started my career with Eid Bailey and graduated from the same academic background with Amy, MPA program, Master of Professional Accountancy at University of South Dakota. Then after graduation, I did an internship, first with Henry Scoten, now merged with Eid Bailey on audit side, and then later tax side. Then I decided that, well, I really think that I'm more a detailed-oriented person, and I love forms instead of audit report. So I decided to go on tax side. And first 3 years, if you're getting into a public accounting firm, first the typical career path is first 1 to 3 years, you get to do a little bit of everything, which is actually good for you. You get to do individual tax, business tax, trust returns, and business consulting. And then my first 3 years, I did all of this with Eid Bailey. Eid Bailey is the top 25 CPA firm in the nation and provide a variety of services. So you get your hands in different niche and kind of figure out what you really like, your strength. So first 3 years, every tax season, I was assigned to prepare fiduciary return, trust returns. And it was mind-numbing number. Typically, I prepare, in addition to individual returns and business return I prepare on average 350 returns per tax season. And throughout non-busy season, I also work on those extended trust returns. So it's like I can prepare trust return in my dream. Still suddenly wake up and saying, oh, I know how to prepare that, figured it out. Then go to work. After the first 3 years, and then people say, what do you like? At that time I said, well, I love just about everything. But since I got so proficient with trust compliance work, and also I love volunteering and different board and nonprofit. So tax compliance for nonprofit organization was also one of my favorites. So 50% of my time I work on trust return, the other 50% of my time nonprofit, specifically private foundation, charitable trust. And then later on, people say, if you want to move up on the ladder, you need to just pick one. Then trust return is my no-brainer, since South Dakota is the #1 status, trust status in the nation. That's sort of my career background. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't tell you how relieved I am to find out that I'm not the only foreign-born panelist. I'm originally from North Dakota, so it just made me feel comfortable here. Most of you know me. I am a professor in the Business Administration and Economics Department here, primarily in finance. I've been teaching for approximately 6 years. Prior to being at Dakota Wesleyan, I was at Northern State University teaching in their Banking and Financial Services program. Prior to that, I was in the financial services business for about 20 years. I worked in trust departments. I was a bank president for a while, financial advisor, insurance. Basically, a lot of the different programs on what we call the non-interest income side of the bank. I didn't do a lot of loans and those things, but on the wealth management side, that's primarily where I spent my time. Prior to that, I was an attorney and licensed to practice in North Dakota and Minnesota. Graduated from law school from University of North Dakota, the Fighting Sioux at that time. We don't talk about the name change nowadays. But I spent about 11 years in the trust industry, as I said, working for various companies, Norwest and Wells Fargo primarily. In that time frame, that's where I met a lot of people in this room. And it's great to see familiar faces and just know that the trust industry in South Dakota is booming, okay? And a lot of people in this room are responsible for that. And as we talk about it today, I want the students to simply understand what the opportunities are, along with what the responsibilities are in order to get into this business, okay? We're going to talk about the program that's been created by Dakota Wesleyan University, that's been approved by American Bankers Association as one of the educational events or requirements before sitting for the Certified Trust and Financial Advisor certificate. As far as my background, again, when I was in the trust business, I attended the American Bankers Trust School and graduate trust schools. I was in the Graduate School of Banking at Colorado. I achieved the CTFA designation, the CRSP, Certified Retirement Services Professional designation, Certified IRA Services Professional designation. As a financial advisor, I held Series 24, 66, 7, 6, and 63 FINRA licenses to sell various financial service products. And as in the practice of law, I did general practice of law. So that's my background. It's great to be here. Dakota Wesleyan has been a great transition for us, and it's kind of interesting how divine providence works because we had actually been talking about creating a trust program at Northern when I was there, but when I left and became the finance professor, that kind of went by the wayside until Amy Novak was on a plane coming back to Sioux Falls and discussed the trust business with somebody who was from out of country. And then the ball just kind of rolled, and by June, we had, with a lot of effort from other people at Wesleyan here, had submitted 6 courses in the curriculum for our graduate certificate in trust. So.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you. Thank you to this group, to DWU for having us. I'm sorry I was a little late. I couldn't get off the phone to get here in time, so I apologize for being a little late, but I'm grateful to be here and excited to see a full room. My name is Matt Tobin. I serve as the COO, Managing Director and Legal Counsel for South Dakota Trust Company. I've been there for 10 years. I joined there in 2008. Our company was probably, or is probably, I think, one of the largest non-depository trust companies in the state. to give you just some reference as to our growth, because I think that's important as you consider a career in this field and what brings us here to the development of a program here. I was the ninth person hired here in South Dakota, and we currently have 60 people hired. So we've hired 51 people after me in 10 years. So today we have an office location. We have 2 office locations in Sioux Falls. We have another office location in Rapid City. We have a services company in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and we have offices in both New York City and Connecticut. So across our company, we have 66 people, again, 60 of us here in South Dakota and 6 people in New York, and one of those 6 people then offices out of Connecticut as well. We have about 2,500 personal trust accounts for which we are trustee. It represents about 50 billion in trust assets. We also have what are called private family trust company relationships. We have about 42, soon to be 43 of those. That represents another about 70 billion in privately held family assets in trust. Myself, I'm an attorney. I graduated from USD Law School, and I was in private practice, and as my boss, Pierce McDowell, likes to say, I couldn't spell trust when I started in this job. He could be right. I was a litigator. I tried civil litigation cases for 10 years, and I was going to exit that, and was on my way actually to a different job when I bumped into Pierce. I've known Pierce and his family, and we were just talking, and he said, if you're going to leave the practice of law, would you consider coming to the trust company? And I said, well, I don't know. To do what? He said, I don't know. And I said, okay. And not much has changed. But today, I'm grateful they give me some titles. So today I manage our trust company. I'm president of our services company. I head up our foundation effort, which is over $1 million. Here in South Dakota. I'm a member of the South Dakota Trust Association with Jessica, was a founding board member of that group. I lead our PAC. I provide some in-house legal services, and I serve on 24 other trust company boards as well.
So as you can see, we've just got this great panel with a wealth of knowledge here for you, hopefully to take advantage of with some questions. So be thinking of your questions as you hear them speak. I think as you heard them all say, trust really is a diverse area, right? You heard tax, you heard fiduciary law, international law, operations. But I think what you heard is nobody goes to school to be a trust officer. None of these people thought that they would end up in this industry, which is why we love to talk about it. So what I'd like each of our panelists to talk about next is, what would a starting job look like with your institution, and how does the Dakota Wesleyan University program fit into what that job might be?
Dorsey and Whitney Trust Company typically likes to start people right out of college and train them into positions. And so we like to promote our internal people first. And that's why this idea has been such a great thing for us, because when you're in college, and it was the same when I was there forever ago, there was maybe 2 pages on trust tax, if even, and when we interview people, we'll say, do you know what a trust is? No, no one really knows. And so this is really a way for the trust industry to get people that can kind of just start with their feet on the ground and have that background that they wouldn't have had any other way. And for our company, we would hire in people as entry-level trust administrators, or entry-level investment analyst position, an entry-level operations position, depending on what your interests would be. I think this program could work for any of those positions.
I think this ties in with what Matt was saying when he started out in the industry, not knowing what you're going to be doing. Because JTC is still stabilising itself and establishing itself locally, with us, if you were to join, it would be a little chaotic, would be the first thing I'd say, because we've only got 3 in the team at the moment, which isn't enough to be doing all the work that needs to be done. So I'd agree with Amy, in an ideal world, if we were as established as Dorsey or South Dakota Trust Company, there'd probably be a great training plan, and you'd do this and you'd start here and you'd move on to this. But with us, it's all hands on deck and just do whatever needs to be done to get us through at the moment. That's what it feels like. It's not that bad, honestly. But it's when you're starting out in any profession, it's not the sexy stuff that you do at the beginning. It is a bit of scanning. It is a bit of filing. It's starting at the lowest level and working up. And we all, that's what I did 20 plus years ago. Let's skim over that. But I had to start somewhere, and you do start with the basic stuff, and that's where you learn it from, and you grow, and you develop your experience. So I can't sit here and say, yeah, you're going to be talking to clients and you're going to be out traveling on the road. That comes later, and I suppose that's the excitement of what you do. That is the sexier stuff later on, but you've got to start somewhere. And I think this qualification gives people locally a foundation, an understanding of what we do. I completely agree with Amy. Whenever I'm interviewing and somebody has a blank look on their face, when you say, what do you understand about our industry? I would be so excited to interview someone and they say, oh, well, I'm attending this course and I'm beginning to understand. It's giving something back. And if you can see someone's enthusiastic and motivated and wants to learn more, that's, for me, is more important than the experience. The experience comes, but having the right attitude and starting out and being committed to studying something, that speaks volumes for me. So I think this qualification is phenomenal locally, and I'm so grateful that whoever put it together has given people the opportunity to study it.
Thank you, Michelle. The quality of job candidate Michelle just summarized is also the same quality Ike Bailey is looking for. As I mentioned, that first 3 years of career at Ike Bailey, a typical a public accounting firm, you get your hands on just about everything, doing the basic work. Then you gain your knowledge and get specialized in certain your favorite niche, then develop in-depth knowledge in that area. And typically, if you would like a career with Ike Bailey, you start with internship with Ike Bailey. Closest office is in Sioux Falls. Ike Bailey's headquarters is in Fargo, and we have office in Aberdeen and the neighboring state. And if you would like to get into the trust work, Sioux Falls is your best location. And each year we have 2 to 3 interns assigned to trust work. And you will notice, if you ever work at HR Block, Liberty Tax, and you will notice the return preparation procedures at Ike Bailey is completely a different experience. It's not a data enter nightmare. It's a learning process. And with Ike Bailey's trust team, you will be able to understand how to read a trust document, why this trust return need to be prepared for this type of trust versus another type. And then you will get a overview of trust industry in South Dakota. Thank you.
I'm going to defer my comments for after Matt's done speaking, since he's looking at somebody for their particular corporation or business. And then I will talk to you about what I think the requirements for a student enrolling or a candidate to be in our program, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with what you've heard here. At our company, we're looking for good people. I think that's a consistent theme that you've heard here. And, somebody that's excited about what they are doing, that they're excited to learn, our company, I'm sure like everybody else here, you have to be able to work well with other people. You have to communicate effectively. You have to, manage your time. I think one of the things that we talk about often is being able to keep all the plates spinning or all the balls in the air. There's just a lot of things going on. And if you're a person, and I say this because I'm married to one, but my wife is a very single task person. She has a plan for the day, and that's how her day goes, and she really handles one or two things at a time. I'm not, sure that we're all that compatible, although it's worked for 21 years, because I'm completely different. I've got 1,000 things going on and running 100 different directions, and I guess truthfully, I'm grateful for her because she kind of stabilizes me. But my point is that you have to be able to multitask, I mean, because I find that you will come in on a day and you might think that you have a to-do list and there's items that you need to attend to, and you might, leave at 5:30 and you will not have gotten to any of those. Why? Because 10 other things came up. And so you have to be able to adapt and think and move. And so I think what you're hearing here, these are career and professional skills, characteristics, more so than the coursework. These are things that you bring as an individual, and those are things that are attractive, I think, to all employers, but particularly in this space. The program that you're talking about here gives you the next layer, that is some curriculum, some coursework, some introduction into the space. And I know all of us would find that to be very attractive, because we have found that there's a shortage of qualified people. And we too have an internship, and we do a lot of on-the-job training, and we hire out of our internship program quite a bit. And there's a lot of opportunity, and I think just knowing that you can get an introduction, you don't have to raise your hand, but if I was to ask, how many of you know what a trust is, or who the principal parties in a trust relationship are? And so, there's probably many of you that don't. That's okay, but the course like this allows you to answer those questions. It gives you an introduction. It gives you a certain level of understanding generally for the field in which you might work in. And we can work a lot with you. There's a lot of adjunct courses, on-the-job training. There's a lot of things that we can provide to move you along, but it's wonderful that perhaps you can graduate from here with this degree, certificate program, and come to us with some knowledge, some industry knowledge specific to this particular field. I just jotted down, and I'll run through, and I think this panel is great. You see people from different companies, and I'm grateful that Beatrice is here from the tax side, because her presence here shows that yes, there's jobs within the trust companies. There's also jobs related to the trust industry that touch this field as well, and it really takes all of us. We all can talk about our own companies, but our company, for example, we use, there's lawyers in town, there's accounting firms in town, there's banks, there's operation people, there's lots of different groups of companies and professions that touch this industry. And so again, I'm grateful that she's here just to provide you a glimpse of some other opportunities outside of the trust companies themselves. But within the trust company, you have trust officers, and we have associate trust officers, and then senior vice president like trust officers. We have operations people. These are people that are moving money. We have 8 people in our operations department. Our company moves on average $32 million a day. So we have different wire limits and different levels of security and different processes to make all that happen, but we're receiving and sending a lot of money, and so it takes a team of people to coordinate with a bank to make all that happen, to record it and make sure that it gets to the right places. We have a compliance team, and so we have people that work in compliance, and I don't know, we'll probably get to this, but I think that's a growing field. There's more and more, whether it's international. In Michelle's world, it touches mine a little bit, but there's all these international requirements, and then you have federal law requirements, you have state requirements, but this compliance element is becoming increasingly important. And then you have, management and business development, and so there's lots of different careers within each company that are all related to the trust industry. That's way too long. But
No, that was great. No, I think that's great. And I think, Todd, too, if you could touch on, because we've talked about this specifically, I think you're going to have an interview process where you look at overall reading and writing, and what we've seen at the American Bankers Association at the school is there's been a decline in the papers that we receive for students going through the CTFA process. And so I think the Dakota Wesleyan University program is going to address that. So if you could talk about that.
Sure, and this is hopefully a good segue from Matt's comments. The old adage, "Are leaders born or are they made?" The same thing can be said about trust officers. We live in a fiduciary world, and it's a different world than most people live in. And so most of us didn't go to school to become trust officers. The trust business found us because of our experience and our personalities, perhaps. It is a world where you understand quickly that it's more than just money. It's about building relationships with people. It's about having personal skills to be able to communicate difficult concepts to your customers, sometimes doing things that you wouldn't normally do as far as personal relationships and providing service that go above and beyond. It's about character, it's about integrity, and it's about a pursuit of excellence as far as knowledge and professionalism that a lot of other professions don't have. And having been in the law profession and the financial advisory profession, they could learn a lot from the trust business. So as a candidate, what I would say, what we're looking for is somebody who certainly has the acumen, somebody that can go through our program. It's been structured to look pretty much like the first year of law school. It's that kind of rigor. If you've gone through an MBA program at some of the other universities or even Dakota Wesleyans, this is going to be substantially a higher rigor than those programs. And specifically, it was designed because there is a high bar need in this industry for professionals. So you might have the acumen to get through the program, but the other element is just simply having the personality fit to be able to subordinate your personal and professional goals, perhaps, under this auspice of a fiduciary. And a lot of times that's not easy. The process that we go through is we are looking for students right now. We've got the application online. We've gotten some feedback. We've actually had some interviews. But that's kind of the process. We receive an application from a candidate that's interested. We review the candidate information. We actually do a background check to make sure there's nothing out there that is known about this particular candidate that would disqualify them from the industry participation. And then we sit down and do a personal interview with them. It's myself, Christine Macheski, who's the chair of the business department, and Ann Kelly, who is our dean of our college. And so we sit down and go through a formal interview with them, just kind of understanding their background and their interest in the trust, their knowledge of the trust industry, and making sure that they're a good fit for our program. Once the interview is concluded, they will be told whether they are able to participate as a candidate in the program. So right now, our greatest hurdle, the greatest challenge that we have is finding students. And that's what this trust forum is really designed to do. It's to give the students that are here an idea of what the opportunities are. And they are immense, okay? The thing that has impressed me so much about South Dakota is the industry's willingness to participate in helping us cultivate the culture of creating employees. Jessica has been instrumental in making sure that our program is qualified and has been approved by the ABA as as a requirement for sitting for the CTFA. They've endorsed our program. The South Dakota Trust Association has endorsed our program. And so that is giving us credibility and visibility that we wouldn't have otherwise. President Novak was down at the South Dakota Trust Association Fall Forum and was on a panel in front of industry professionals and talked about our involvement in trying to grow the pool of employees to pull from. So, but the final comment I would make is, and I tell this to my students in class all the time, you have to learn to love to learn, okay? In this industry, things change day by day. And so you can never sit back and think that you've learned it all because you'll be left behind. And one of the requirements of being in this industry is to be, as a fiduciary, to be the best of the best. And it's everybody else in the industry holding you to that standard. Okay?
Yeah, I think the industry does change, as is apparent as to what's happened in South Dakota over the last, 5 to 10 years and how the trust industry has changed here. The program at Dakota Wesleyan University is one of 3 that we are aware of across the United States. So this right here is a well-kept secret. One of them is at the University of Delaware, and that was in response to the need in Delaware. South Dakota competes somewhat with Delaware for jurisdictions, for where families go when they're doing specialized estate planning. So the University of Delaware put together a program, and then Campbell University in North Carolina is a second program that we are aware of. And then you have your program right here. So I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of it, which is my last question for all of the panelists here. And it's, why would you encourage our students that we have among us today to go into the industry?
I guess I would encourage you because I love it. I don't know if that's a good enough reason, but it's been a very rewarding career for me. The variety that you see every day, like Matt said, when you come in the morning, you have in your mind how the day's going to go, and it gets off track within the first 5 minutes sometimes, but that's what makes it exciting. You're never bored. There's always great people to meet. We work with such smart attorneys, and our clients are smart, and it's just a great way. If you like to work with people, it's a really great career. And so I would encourage all of you, if you feel a little bit in your hearts that you think you could do this, I think you would never be disappointed. I never looked back when I left public accounting and decided to make this my career. So
I often think, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have kept trying to be an actress. Where would I be now? Would I be where I am now? No chance would I be where I am. And I agree with Amy, the opportunities that my career has given me, admittedly, I have pushed. I'm not a wallflower and going to sit back and wait for it to come to me. But when I look at the countries I've lived in, the cultures I've lived in, I'm not the most gifted academically, I have to say, but the new things I've learned, how I challenge myself to learn new things, the softer skills, being a leader, being a manager, you have to have a real level of self-awareness in our job. I can't lead a team of people and not know my own weaknesses, because I want to grow and develop my team. I want them to be the best they can be, to work with me and support me and to grow the team. And I think to have those skills in my life, I feel very blessed that I've had those opportunities. And what Beatrice was saying, you just don't know which doors are going to be opened, which route you're going to follow. There's so much opportunity, and Matt was saying too, I certainly would never have gone the compliance route, and I'm really sorry if anyone really likes compliance in this room, but it's not for me whatsoever. But there are people who love it, and when you were saying about going into compliance, it's a real industry in itself, and you think jobs in life that you'll keep forever. So being a dentist, that would be a good career because people always need dentists, a funeral director. But compliance, the requirements in our industry are getting so tight, and we're so controlled in what we do. I think compliance would be a really strong career. But yeah, I echo what Amy said. I haven't regretted for a second my career.
Thank you, Michelle. I agree with all of what you just said and Amy said. In addition, I feel like trust industry provides you with a tremendous amount, endless learning opportunities. Each trust account you handle is the product of intelligence from a group of very, very smart professionals. So each trust is actually created by very intelligent family advisors, smart lawyers, financial advisors, and tax accountant. So no matter if you're a trust officers, you're a CPA like me, when you do your work, don't just do your work and think about why they created a trust structure like this, why this particular structure fit this family, why we handle the tax structure like this, why we prepare this tax return, not that one. And then you get to talk to, well, before I started my career, I thought lawyers are horrible people because that's what I got from the TV shows. Then later, I started talking to lawyers because of the trust return. Oh, they're very nice, just like these people. So it built up my confidence. I learned from the legal side, from financial side. So it's like a continuing education after you get into this industry. Your learning will not stop after your graduation. So, thank you.
I have the enviable position to be able to do two things now that I love to do. The trust business to me, the trust industry was the highlight of my career before going into teaching. I love to teach. And now I get to teach of a profession that I love to work in. It's the best of all worlds. The challenge of communicating the requirements of a trust officer to current students is helping them understand that they need to be an expert in many, many different areas. Because it depends upon what position you're in, and the program that is our certificate program was designed not specifically for the South Dakota trust industry, but for any South Dakota or any trust company in the nation. And so if you go through, or when you go through our program, you will be very well educated on a wide variety of topics that the panel has discussed today. You will have on-site training for how they do their business, but this is a great foundation on which to build a fabulous career. One of the things that I looked at when I started thinking about what I want to do for a career was is what my father had done. He was a small town lawyer in a town of about 750 people. One of the things that attracted me to the idea of becoming an attorney was the fact that my dad was kind of the go-to person for advice. And I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be that advisor. And maybe that's why I spent a lot of time trying to become the smartest person in the room. And if there were one or two of us, it might happen. But you continually try to improve because that's what people expect from you as a trust officer. You are their personal advisor, you become a family advisor, and in this position you grow to maintain family relationships. They invite you to be part of their family. And that, along with the professional satisfaction you get by actually using the knowledge that you've accumulated over the years is very, very satisfying.
I don't know, how much time do we have? Right? I don't know if it's a short answer or long answer. So, I think it's worth noting just a couple of highlights. One is it's a profession, and you can have a career in this industry. and it's a good paying career. And, I think it starts out well. There's opportunities for advancement, there's career development, you can continue to learn, and overall, it's a very good paying profession. Of course, your life work isn't all about that, but you will have house payments to make and car payments and kids to put in college, so I know that it's a component of when you look at your career. But moving beyond that, I think what you've heard, if I could summarize what I think I heard, was relationships and collaboration. And for me, that's very personal. I was, as I said, a trial lawyer, and I was burned out, to be honest. I just felt that I spent so much of my time in litigation, essentially beating my head against the wall. I mean, you fight for your client. Sometimes you end up fighting with your client, but you fight against the other lawyer. You sometimes fight with the judge. But it's very confrontational. I didn't realize that until I got into this line of work, and people ask me all the time, what do you enjoy most about it? And it's collaborative. So I work now, as you heard all of the panelists reference, in a collaborative way with people. I'm a part of a team or a part of a group. I'm one voice in a discussion that's working towards a common goal. And that's far more rewarding for me than it was constantly in confrontation and arguing and what I felt was like beating my head against the wall. And the relationships are very unique. And just to emphasize this point, kind of maybe you're asking, what is a trustee? I mean, if I take you back to the origins of a trust, I think it illustrates the point. The whole concept of a trust actually started back in Great Britain and England. During wartime, men were called in to serve, and they had to go off to battle. And men were landowners, and so when they left to go to war, they put their land in trust and then named somebody that they trusted to look after their land and their family while they were gone, in the hope that they would return. Okay, and that's really what this is all about. It's far more complicated. We have all kinds of rules. There's tax elements. There's all kinds of parts to this. But really, at its core, somebody is setting up an instrument, a trust document, and they're asking you to look after their property for the benefit of somebody else, whether that's a spouse, their children, their grandchildren, many grandchildren. But that's really the role that you're in. So when you talk about relationships, when you talk about being a fiduciary, why there's rules that surround all of this, it's because of the special relationship that you have. It's a very unique position to be entrusted by somebody to take their property, and it's all different kinds of property. We have cash, we have investments, we have real estate, we have homes, we have jets, we have yachts, we have baseball card collections, stamp collections, gold coins, exotic paintings, so
Bitcoin.
so it's all kinds of different property that you are asked to look after for the benefit of somebody else. And it's for the benefit of somebody else that really becomes the art of this job. Because that's not easy. That's not easy. And I can, we could probably talk all afternoon, but, notions of does fair mean equal, and does equal mean fair? I don't know. But if a document says, to be divided amongst my 3 children equally, seems like they should each get a third, right? Does it? Or for each of my 3 children to be treated fairly. Does fairly mean equally? I don't know. And what are each of their needs? And what are their lives like? And how much do you probe into that? How much information do you need? How do you manage that? And how do you guard the trust against if you do say one of the 3 has had a life-altering event and needs a lot more assistance from a trust, and the other 2 siblings would perhaps get less and their kids get less. And now they're arguing with you, hey, why did you do that? My family now, well, because your sibling, well, what right did you have to do that? Well, that's what the trust says. Okay, so but that's a very, it's a very special position. And I know we talk a lot in our company about that there is compliance and there's regulations and there's rules and there's all kinds of special accounting programs and there's tax returns and it's all important. But at the very end of the day, you're asked to look after somebody's property for the benefit of somebody else. And that requires you to study, to learn, to evolve, to grow, to develop relationships, and to fulfill the responsibility that somebody gave you when they initially set it up. So why go into this field? I think it's very rewarding. I think you can have a career in it. There's opportunities to have wonderful relationships. It's very collaborative. And I'll share one of them with you, I guess. I have a young woman, and we could probably all tell stories, but I think this one illustrates this point. I have a young woman who's a beneficiary of a trust, and she has more money than you would ever need. And she's an addict. And unfortunately, she's had a tough go at things, and she has the means to use, and when she uses, she's lost. And so we've had her in treatment, and she does fine, and then out, and there'll be a life event, and it throws her off the rails, and she'll be back. And her family has really thrown up their hands. She's now 30 years old. And they've, just, you deal with her, so to speak. They don't know what to do with her. And there's a lot of family strife, and there's other issues. And so, here I find myself, I'm really, I'd say, ill-prepared for this. But I'm now the only person that really looks after her. I have an obligation to give her a distribution, but I can't give her a distribution when I know that she's using, because now I'm giving her money she can buy. So I have to intervene. I've had to convince her she can trust me. I don't want to take her money. But she has to trust me enough so that I can help her, so that when she's using, I have the ability to intervene and stop that. But I mean, this is beyond just giving kids, a bunch of rich kids a bunch of money. I mean, this is life-altering for people, and to take a situation where, you become somebody's lifeline, so to speak. I never imagined I would be in this position, but it's probably, despite its tragedy, it's probably my favorite client relationship. And I've actually been able to help her. I've been able to help her and her mother. I've been able to help her and her siblings. And these are baby steps, but you're in a position where you have an opportunity to change someone's life. And so at the core, that's what we do, is look after people.
Great story. It really is about the relationships in the trust industry. Sometimes you are that first person to get a call after somebody has died or after there's transition in a family. So it's an awesome place to be. I want to allow time for questions for the group to ask any of the panelists questions. Don't be shy. Yes.
So you guys talked about the unique situation with the boom of the trust industry in Sioux Falls and South Dakota. Does that create kind of a competition between the different companies? So say Michelle and Matthew's company, where they're two different, or you're a smaller one in Sioux Falls, you're a larger company with 60 people. Is there kind of a competition sometimes to hire, or yours is where when you guys hire, it's more of an instructional based deal and kind of learning through teaching, when you were talking about when you guys only have 3 people, so it's more fly by the seat of your pants, hands-on stuff. Does that happen a lot now, especially with the boom that you guys talked about?
You mean in terms of hiring people?
Yeah, just
in
hiring.
the companies?
Yep.
I'm very cautious, just being new in town. I wouldn't go and poach somebody from Matt's company. I think that would be very unsporting. Is that where you're going with your question?
Yeah, I just, because you got, I mean, I've spoke with Todd about this before too. Oh, sorry, you can go ahead. Oh, I thought you had input, sorry. I talked to Todd about this, how he said, at the fall forum, he said, a man came up to him and was like, I need to hire 3 people right now. Now, it sounds like that's all the companies in Sioux
That
Falls.
might have been my number 2.
I was just curious, like, with the different situations that you guys are all in, because you guys are all different in multiple ways, is there, like, just competition that's, like, happens where, like, you got a guy that's interviewed at Matt's company and interviewed at Amy's company, like, trying to get those guys? Is there ways that you guys do things to maybe entice them to come and work for you because they're great candidates?
Well, I think that, I mean, the answer is probably just as complicated as the question, perhaps. No, I mean, in a good way. Generally, I mean, we're all in the same industry, and there is, perhaps some competition. We also kind of sit in different sectors or different niches within the industry. We have different needs. I think it's very collaborative. Having said that, there certainly is movement. You'll have a company that will post, and you'll have somebody from another company apply. I think we try to be respectful and delicate. I can't stop somebody from applying and wanting to come to work for us, but yet, I like Michelle said, I'm not calling another company to, hire somebody away. So I think there's just still a spirit of goodwill. But sure, I think that there's some competition. I think it's getting more competitive to find good people. But the flip side of that is I think it makes all of us, I'll say, be better employers. That is, we may have to raise salaries. We have to provide more benefits. We have to be more flexible. We're dealing with some of that in our company now, trying to meet I think you're all millennials, aren't you? Younger people. But, we're trying to learn as a company how to adapt, how to give people flexibility to maybe work from home, looking at benefits differently. And so I think that's perhaps a good thing. It makes us better. But I think, I mean, to answer your question, is there competition? But I think it's friendly competition, and it's also collaborative. I may have different needs, than anybody else here. Obviously, Eide Bailey, as a tax firm, has probably very specific needs. May or may not be, I'm going to assume would be a little different than mine, and would likely attract a different person. But then, you can see from Amy, who kind of started in Beatrice's world and then moved into the trust world, that's an evolution that can change as well. But it's also, like I said, collaborative in that if I have somebody that applies with us that isn't, maybe we don't have an opening for that particular person or doesn't work for us for whatever reason, I share that I'll have people ask me all the time, hey, I'm looking for this type of a person. Have you, do you have any resumes? Have you talked to anybody? Is there anybody I can follow up with? And I share that often. So I guess I'm just telling you that sure, there's some competition for good people, but we're also, I think, willing to share that and work together as well.
And a real life example, Jessica actually forwarded 2 CVs to me. She knows how desperately I'm looking at the moment, so we stopped flying by the seat of our pants. But I think it is very collaborative.
Well, and in fairness too, as Michelle mentioned, their company started as one of our trust company partners, and then they've moved on, and they're now independent of us. And when they left, the trust officer that we provided to their company and their startup, they really liked, and they came and said, hey, we'd like, is there any chance that she can go with us? And we said, no, absolutely not. We like her too. No. But it was a good, they asked, and we said, no, we really like her, and, we'd like her to stay with us. And then they respected that, and, they've moved on. And so, but yeah, I think it's good for everybody. It's just, I think as a industry, there's a shortage.
I think it's not only the industry, but South Dakota is really unique in that we're small enough to where we all know each other, but we don't necessarily, we're not all in the same space, like Matt said, and I'll give you an example. We put on this event in Orlando every year. We want people to come to this, the largest estate planning conference, and know that South Dakota is an option. And it's all of us trust companies and some lawyers, some law firms and CPA firms that came together to put this event together. And people from Delaware and other jurisdictions go, "What? You came together with your competition to do this?" And it's like, yeah, that's what we do in South Dakota. It's what's the best for our industry. And so we do compete. Sometimes we compete for employees, but I think we're all civil. So, great question. Other questions, please?
I guess as I look at the name tags up there, there are like CPA ratings, and obviously you have some people that kind of law school there now in the trust industry. So I guess one of my questions is, as employers, is that something you're looking for? Someone that's coming in with a CPA rating or having attended law school, does that benefit? Obviously, like, no license or rating hurts, but I guess what is the future employer, what's their opinion on someone that's coming in with other backgrounds and other ratings?
I don't think I should take that given where I came from. So I'm very open when I mean, yes, it's nice to see that someone started, but it comes back to the softer skills for me. And someone gave me a chance when I was 21, fresh out of college. I trained to be an actress, and it was just the right career. I was very lucky. So I don't know how the others, I'm a bit biased, I think, when it comes to that.
I'm just going to comment on that too, because I'm biased too, because I don't have a law degree. I'm not a CPA. I went to school to be a teacher. I taught for 1 year and didn't want to answer to bells and went into banking and have been there ever since. So for me, that worked out, but I started, as many of them have said, you know, I started as an assistant, and you just work your way up and you find your niche within the industry, whether that's in the investment department, whether that's in operations, business development, whatever, wherever works for you. So that's my story and my journey, but I know everybody else has a different one.
I would say a designation is not a requirement, but what's required is the drive that it would take to get a designation. So, you know, many of us that are trust officers strive to be a CTFA, you know, and Jessica's very involved with the ABA. And our investment people, we like to see these CFAs because it takes a little extra work, you know. Life isn't just about sitting back and letting things happen to you. You've got to have the drive and the motivation to do that. And so when you come into an interview and you say, yes, I want to do that, that's on my list, I want to get that done. I think that's probably more important than coming in with something.
I would say my experience was that, again, it's more about personality and the willingness to kind of build those relationships with people. It's having great soft skills. It's having the ability to explain things well to your customers and kind of the big picture kind of thing, how this all kind of fits together. The academic side of it, if you have the acumen to learn, that's a bonus. The designations and the law degree and the CPA designations, those are all great things because, again, they show initiative or the fact that you have put forth an effort to get to a certain point. However, having a law degree does not, as Jessica would tell you, graduating from law school does not necessarily give you a great background in trust because they don't typically teach a lot of trust stuff in law school. But again, to me, if you have the wherewithal to get a bachelor's degree and the drive and the curiosity to learn, that's what I keep telling my students is you have to have this curiosity to kind of learn about all the different areas that you will be exposed to and just that hunger to become the best that you can be. That to me is more important than your GPA. And it's a good thing that when I started this industry, they didn't look at my GPA and college record because I certainly wouldn't be sitting at this panel at this point. But at some point in time, the light bulb came on, and I decided that, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life, and here we go.
I just want to add one thing. I agree with what Todd said and Amy, just having the drive, again, that comes back to that characteristic that we would look for as well. If you do come into the industry or to our company and you have a graduate degree or a certificate degree, that doesn't mean that you know everything. So I wanted just a variation on this, on the answer to the question. It certainly can help you, but we've also found sometimes it's an obstacle. We've had people, for example, come to us out of law school who think, and I think Michelle was commenting, sometimes it's scanning and filing. It's not exciting stuff when you get started. And to be honest with you, we've had people come to us from law school who want a career in the trust industry. They want to be trust officers, and so we've hired them. They started out as assistant trust officers, and their job, includes filing and scanning and some data entry, and while they're learning, and that hasn't gone over real well. And I get it, right? I mean, you have people that say, I've got this debt, and I have a graduate degree, and I've passed the bar, and I'm scanning. Well, that's kind of where it starts, and it's not the task that you're doing. It's that it just takes time. It takes time to learn the industry and to feel your way and learn your way, and so it doesn't. Yes, it's nice to have the degrees and initials, and you can work towards it. But if you do get there, as you've heard, this commitment to learning, you have to be open to understanding that. Even if you have them, it's not going to mean that you're going to just be handed 80 accounts and a computer terminal and a phone and turned loose. It's not going to work like that. And the question I get often is, okay, I get it, I hear you. How long does it take? Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's going to take some time. The quickest transition from an assistant to a trust officer, from an assistant position to an associate trust officer in our company has been just between 1.5 years to 2 years, and that's with somebody with a law degree. And so it's anecdotally, I'd say it's at least 1.5 years to 2 years, and it can be longer. It can, so.
I guess when you take the exam, like CPA exam, AEP, CFP, you're talking about what is the right answer, A, B, C, D, then try to get the score. And then when you get into the industry, every problem, there are no right or wrong answer, and you're trying to figure out optimal solutions. So so there's a detachment between your academic ability and are you really a problem solver, an efficient and effective problem solver? I guess Bailey, CPA is, since you're getting into a CPA firm, it's a requirement, but that doesn't mean you might be a efficient or effective problem solver. So.
Beatrice, you're coming over for dinner because my kids need to hear you say that. I tell them that all the time, and it makes no difference, but I want them to hear you say it.
Any other questions?
Can you talk to us about why Sioux Falls is now the #1 state for assets to be held in, and if that was due to regulations, and how you see that moving forward in the future when other states change their regulations to try to combat that and get the assets over to their state, or do you think South Dakota will stay #1?
So, anybody else want this, or do you want me to?
Loaded question. That's a loaded question.
It's a good question. I was going to provide some background just for some context earlier, but I don't want you to fall asleep either. So I think the quick answer is this. In the mid-'80s, there was a very wealthy family from Wisconsin, and they had hired the attorney to do the estate planning. And the attorney at the time knew that Wisconsin did not have what's called a rule against perpetuities, which meant that the trust could live forever. Okay, it's also called a perpetuities trust. It can just go on forever. But Wisconsin had a state income tax. the lawyer knew that South Dakota didn't have a state income tax, but it had the rule against perpetuities. And so the lawyer was faced with the choice: do I put these trusts in a state where they can go on forever but pay tax, or in a state where they're limited in duration but they don't pay a tax? And while exploring that, he was in South Dakota and met with state leaders, including at the time Governor Janklow, and raised this issue. And he suggested to then Governor Janklow and said, what you should do is repeal your rule against perpetuities. And I think you would be onto something. And it took a little time because there were some other issues related to the state cement plant, and there's other kind of moving parts related to that. But the quick, if I get to it, a couple years later, the state repealed the rule against perpetuities. And then it became the only state at the time that had an unlimited duration of trust and no state income tax. A true anecdotal piece to that is the lawyer waited with the family from Wisconsin, which is risky because the grantor could have passed away and you'd have all kinds of a mess. But they waited. Did set up the trust in South Dakota. The lawyer, after this was all done, got a note from the wealth owner, the grantor. It said, "You saved me over $10 million in taxes. I thought I would share some with you," and gave him a check for $1 million. But that's the origin of this business in South Dakota, because a few years later, then Pierce McDowell was at trust school, and the faculty member was a guy named Roy Adams. Roy Adams was kind of the grandfather of the modern trust and estate planning world. He's now deceased, but Roy was teaching the class, and after the class, Pierce McDowell went up to him and said, "Roy, are you aware that in South Dakota that there's no rule against perpetuities and no state income tax?" And he said, "No, you have to write about this." So Pierce wrote this article that was then published in Trust and Estates magazine, and that's really kind of the birth of the South Dakota trust industry, so to speak. Citibank was one of the first then to say, we've got brick and mortar in a credit card building, let's put a trust department. You saw some other people get in line, and that's really been the driving, those two features, the unlimited duration of a trust and the no state income tax. Today, there's other states that have entered into that space, but initially South Dakota was the only one. And that's what gave it a start. The other part of your question is, will other states change their laws? Mm-hmm. That's happening all the time. Mm-hmm. And in South Dakota, there's what they call the Governor's Trust Task Force. In the late 90s, I believe. I believe it's the late 90s, around 2000 maybe. The governor then appointed a task force, and it included some trust company people, some lawyers, practitioners, some legislative leaders, and that still exists. I would argue that the task force has been very responsible for the growth of this industry. And it's worked in two ways, hand in hand. One is that's the forum for people to bring new ideas. So if there's something that works in Delaware, this is where that idea gets presented, it gets vetted, and if people, if we want to make a change, that's the avenue in which that change gets made. The other side, though, that's worked in tandem with that is that we're pretty conservative by nature. So South Dakota's never been one to, say, jump first. And that's worked in this process, too. So as people have brought ideas, if they've not been tested or if there's some uncertainty around that proposal, we've stayed away from some issues over the last 20 years that other states have found to be problematic. And I'll just give you a quick example. There's a whole area of this industry called domestic asset protection, DAPTs. These are asset protection trusts, okay? Other states moved quicker in that area. South Dakota was a little slow to adopt, but scholar material would tell you that South Dakota has the best asset protection laws in the country. So I would say that we got it right. However, Nevada eliminated what are called exception creditors. Those are people that can still take claim to the trust assets. They have no exception creditors, including ex-spouses and children. Okay? South Dakota didn't feel like that was the right public policy position to take on that matter, and so they have those exception creditors, spouses and children. Fast forward, I think every commentator would say that South Dakota not only got the law right, they also embodied the right spirit of the law. And that's just an example where the task force worked for about 3 years to get the law right and then wrestled over this exception creditor issue and in the end got it right. That little example has played out in all kinds of directed trusts, notice provisions. There's all kinds of little nuances, and the combination of that has really led to the development of the industry. South Dakota today enjoys a #1 ranking in Dynasty Perpetual Unlimited Duration Trust, #1 directed trust statute, #1 in reformations, decanting, modifications, where you can, the procedures to make some changes to trusts. It ranks #2 in the asset protection field only because the author of the study is in Nevada and authored the law that has no exception creditors. Outside of that, everybody else would agree that South Dakota is best. And then on trust company laws, it's routinely #1. But your question's good because other states change. So, when we started, say, in the private trust company space, it was really South Dakota and Nevada. And then Wyoming came on board. And then New Hampshire literally took our laws and copied them word for word and passed them. So New Hampshire got involved. And then you've seen now Tennessee, Ohio, Florida. And so just in my time, we've gone from 2 states to like 8 states. You've seen, we've gone from being 1 state, the only state with no limit on trust duration and no income tax. Now we're 1 of 7. And so it constantly changes. And there's a little bit of, you don't want to just race to the bottom, right? I mean, you don't. So again, that task force is really instrumental. And we hear that a lot. People will say, what have you done in South Dakota that's made the state so successful and you've really gotten it right, meaning the laws you have are good and you've avoided some of the disasters that other states have encountered. And I would say that's really the task force. They've had really good leadership, and they've, again, the combination of wanting to be progressive and be a leader, but countered with a conservative nature that we don't want to, jump first or, get ourselves in trouble either. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for the question too is wondering if other states do start adopting and the assets start flowing out of the state, would that change the need for workers in the trust industry? What's the long-term outlook for?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think, let me say this, and others may disagree with me. I don't think that other states jumping in will do much to deter the momentum that South Dakota has. Even if you were to jump in, it would take you time to really establish yourself as a top jurisdiction. And to add to that, that's not just because the laws, you can write laws that are as good as ours,
Right.
but just as you see here, it takes an industry of people. You have to have in-state lawyers and companies and trustees and tax people and banks, and you have to have an infrastructure together to support that industry. And that would continue to distinguish the state from others. But the flip side of your question is one that we, I think, are quite guarded about, and that is it wouldn't take much to turn people off
Right.
in South Dakota. For example, I'll just give you, I don't see this happening, but if South Dakota instituted an income tax, okay, I would suggest to you that every one of us would be looking for a new job. That might be a bit of an overstatement. Well, Todd would be safe. He's probably tenured here, but the rest of us, it would be a significant, and I'll give you a real life example. One of the leading states, not on par with South Dakota, but a top tier state, was Alaska. They had good laws, had built out some infrastructure, they gained some momentum, and the oil industry crashed, right? Alaska's broke. So Alaska was looking for some revenue at the state level, and they've instituted a corporate income tax. A company called the Alaska Trust Company literally packed up and moved to Nevada, now known as Peak Trust Company. They left the state and took all the trust with them because they knew that if they didn't leave, the trust were leaving. So, and I'm using income debt, but there could be other little things that if we're not careful can turn people off because they have other options. And so I think that's, we're all very active. Again, the task force really is the group that implements new laws, but I think we're all sensitive to maybe proposals that would threaten the industry that we have, and it can go the other way and would quickly if there was something passed that was detrimental. I don't see that happening. Our state, I'll just add, our state's been very supportive. This is a priority for the governors, for state leaders, and we've been more active in telling the story. The state's, I think, if you look at our state, ag, of course, is number one. Tourism is number two, and I think financial services is number three. If it's not three, it's four to healthcare. But I think financial services sector is the third or fourth largest component of our state economy. And so within the financial services sector, then, of course, you have banks and you have credit cards and lenders, but you then have the trust industry. And, on the bank, if you look at banks and trust companies, when I came into this role, there were approximately 60 community state chartered banks. Today, I think there's 32. When I started, there were under 30 trust companies, and today there's 99. So the state's trust companies' role within the state sector has flipped. Community banks are still important, don't get me wrong, but there's fewer of them today and far more trust companies today. And because of that, it's a priority for state government.
Any more questions? Good questions. Okay. So thank you. I would just say thank you for having us here. Please catch any of us if you have any questions. Like the brochure says, take a bold step. Think about the program. So thanks for being here.
Feel free to stay around and mingle, grab your card, and don't forget about your lip balm. Thanks for having me. I'll take one.